of Jesus Christ and his death more than 2,000 years ago.
Where Christians all over the world observe this day with humility and reverence in remembrance of the sacrificial death of Christ.
Now, throughout his life on earth, we know that Jesus Christ preached and practiced tolerance up to the point of death when he prayed for his persecutors.
By implication, the real message of Good Friday is defined by virtue of peaceful coexistence and tolerance.
Now, the question is, how can we use these virtues of tolerance and peaceful coexistence to heal the land and build the nation, Nigeria?
We will also take the state of the nation in the light of the celebration of the Good Friday.
Yes, indeed. This morning, we're joined by Father Professor Cornelius Afim. He's a director, Mission and Dialogue Catholic Secretariat of Nigeria. It's good to have you, Father.
You're welcome.
Now tell us about the origin of Good Friday and how it is observed.
Good Friday. Somebody has asked me what is good in a Friday that somebody was killed. Actually, we can trace the origin of Good Friday to the Old Testament, when Isaiah prophesied about the Messiah who was coming to die for our sins. Jesus Christ came to die for our sins. And this is what Isaiah says in chapter 52. He was despised and rejected by men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. And as one from whom men hide their faces, he was despised, and we esteem him not. Surely he has borne our grief and carried our sorrows. Yet we esteem him stricken, struck down by God, and afflicted. But he was wounded for our transgressions. He was bruised for our iniquities. Upon him was the chastisement that made us whole, and with his stripes we are healed. So Good Friday is a day Christ sacrificed himself for us. And the origin, like you can see, we can trace the origin back to the Last Supper. You know, the Jews, they celebrate the Passover. But Jesus Christ, on the eve of his passion, decided to have a meal, the Last Supper, with his disciples. This supper is very, very important in the life of the Christian body. This was the occasion he demonstrated humility, the spirit of sacrifice, by washing the feet of the disciples. And you may recall that as he was washing their feet, Peter didn't want that. He said, "Are you going to wash my feet?" Why did Peter not allow his feet to be washed? Because in Israel, the meanest slave is the one who washes the feet of the master. But Jesus Christ stooped down to do the work of a slave. And after he has washed their feet, he said, "Do you know what I have done to you? Now you go and do the same." In other words, the origin of Good Friday is, first of all, the institution of the ability to serve. Jesus Christ is Lord, is God, is Master. If he could serve his followers, it means that whoever will be a leader in our world today should be ready to wash the feet of the followers.
Again, let's come back. I'm sure that you know that today has also been declared a day of prayer for Leah Shuabu, one of the girls who was captured by Boko Haram and in captivity. Although some hours ago there's a report that seems to say that there's a likelihood she might have been released, or they're talking about her release so far. But going beyond that, you know, there seems to be a lot more captivity, you know, in our society today, even beyond just one girl, especially in the issues of people living, you know, peacefully, cohabitation in Nigeria. Father, how do you see this on a Good Friday? What is your message to Nigerians on cohabitation?
the message, for example, if we want to talk about, first of all, let us look at why Leah, among the number of girls that were captured, something stood out. That she refused to deny Jesus. She refused to convert. She's convinced of her faith. And the message of Nigeria to Nigeria today, in my own view, you see, we have suffered for so long in this country, using religion and ethnicity as a kind of camouflage. A lot of the greedy leaders we've had in this country, these rose to power using religion and ethnicity. And we can see this in the drama of the Passion of Good Friday. Look at the characters in the Passion narrative of Good Friday. First of all, Jesus Christ told the disciples, pray. Watch and pray. What now happened? They slept. And when the soldiers came, Peter took the sword and cut off the ear of a man called Marcus. Why did Peter do that? Because he did not pray when he was supposed to pray. Wherever there is no prayer in your life, when you don't have the power of persuasion, you take to arms. So those who carry weapons, those who are kidnapping in the name of religion, they are doing that because they really don't understand the God that they worship. Because I cannot see God who is good, who is full of mercy and compassion, commanding somebody to kidnap, to rape, and to commit evil. Now there's something that we must know about Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ is a prophet, is a king, and is a priest. There is no Christian in the entire world who can reference Jesus for violence. For example, you can't kill somebody and say, I kill you in the name of Jesus. No. Because Jesus himself did not allow that. He did not allow violence. And that is why he told Peter, those who carry the sword will die by the sword. So how does it relate to Leah? How does it relate to Nigeria? Leah is a victim of terrorism, kidnapping. And these people are doing this, they say they are doing it in the name of God. Which God? If God wanted everybody to belong to one particular religion, he had the ability to do it.
And that brings me to my next question. You know, when you look at the Leah case and the issue of tolerance in Nigeria and what the religious scriptures actually preach, you know, it's amazing that even the Quran actually promotes peace through Quran chapter 9 verse 16, where it actually says, to you is your religion, and to me is my religion, to you is your religion. So there is no compulsion in the religion. So when you look at the fact that also the Bible preaches tolerance, but yet we still have groups who do not appreciate other people's religions and beliefs, what do you have to say to those group of people?
Well, since you have entered the Quran, let me use the Quran to answer you, then I'll come back to the Bible. The same Quran says, if you kill one person, it's as if you have killed the whole world. And if you save one person, it is as if you have saved the whole world. You see, there is what they call the ideology of the terrorists. I don't want to call it the ideology of Islam. It may please you to know that my maternal grandfather was a Muslim, and he was a very good Muslim. My uncle was the chief imam of my village. He was in the church the day I was ordained 28 years ago. He sat in the front with all his turbans. Coincidentally, I have been working with Muslims for 27 years. And I represent the whole of Africa in the Vatican, in the Commission for Religious Relations with Muslims. I have been a delegate of the Vatican to dialogue with the Shiites in Iran, the Teherans. Now this is what happened. The Bible, there are verses in the Bible that talks about war, like the destruction of Amalekites. There are the areas in the Bible that Old Testament that talk about killing. There are the stories of war, the judges, the kings, they are all about. And remember too, in the Quran, there are a lot of verses that talk about war, killing, like the surahs of Medina. Why did they talk about war? Because Muhammad, the Prophet Muhammad, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, was defending himself. But the Christian religion has an advantage. We cannot use the Old Testament today just to preach salvation. No. Jesus Christ came to give us the rule. There's what they call the footstep of the Master. Jesus Christ lived and died. And of course, the Prophet Muhammad came in on Moses 100 years later. How did Jesus Christ carry out his work? Jesus Christ told his disciples, it was said in the Old Testament, thou shalt not kill. But I tell you, if you even call your brother a fool, you will pay for it. So, Jesus did not carry out any act of violence. He did not kill anybody. So the terrorists who are quoting the Quran and thinking that that is the way of life is because they don't remember all those verses, in the Mecca verses. Because the verses in the Quranic verses in Mecca were very peaceful. Very peaceful. That time, the Prophet has not, the opposition was not very strong. And I don't want to delve into that, but I want to tell you that Jesus Christ came to give life and to give it abundantly. John chapter 10 verse 10.
Essentially, the reason why I threw up this issue of chapter 9 verses 1 to 6 of the Quran is because of what we're witnessing today as Nigerians. How do we begin to tolerate one another? I mean, you're a cleric. I'm sure you interface with other clerics. What role, essentially, do you think that they have? And how strong are their voices in ensuring that Nigerians live together in peace?
In the first place, I don't like the word tolerance. There is one thing that is common to all of us, humanity. Human beings are supposed to love one another, not tolerate one another. You tolerate that which is bizarre. You tolerate that which is ugly, very ugly. But God created us in love. And He wants us to live in love. Let me tell you something. What is happening in the northern part of Nigeria in the context of religion, if you look at it deeply and critically, I don't think it has anything to do with religion. In the West, Muslims and Christians live together in peace and harmony. In my school, Fatima College, when I was in secondary school, I physically carried blocks when the Muslim youth were building their mosque. Down there now, which is where I come from, when we want to do some projects, we invite Muslims, they contribute. In fact, the television I have in my office, in Kali Secretariat, is a Muslim who bought it. So the point I'm trying to make is that, you see, Islam entered the north through the jihad of Uthman and Fodio.
Okay.
The south.
Okay, sorry, Sally. Let me come to something really pertinent. I mean, when you talk about the Good Friday, you talk about, soberness, you talk about melancholy, you talk about reflection. you talk about communing with self, coming to terms with issues. And it occurred to a lot of people yesterday in a conversation. Someone said, we have more churches and mosques than we have schools. And when you look at that definition, you find out that a lot of the learning that happens doesn't necessarily happen in schools anymore. They happen within religious institutions. People take more what the pastor says, as a principle of life than what they lead or learn in a curriculum in the walls of a school. How can we re-engineer that thought, that learning system within these religious institutions to teach the right principles, such as peace?
Well, let me use the context of Good Friday. I want to use a character here, Judas. Jesus Christ spent the whole time teaching them. And of course, on the eve of the Passion, he told them, look, one of you will betray me. That word betrayer is very strong. But what happened? Judas, did he really want to betray Christ in a way and manner that he would like Christ to die? He collected money and he came and told the people the man I will kiss. So the Judas kiss. So when you look at religion today, the things we preach, there are so many churches. There are a lot of pastors. They have their agenda. They have their mission. They are not talking about salvation. They are talking about their pockets. How they are going to collect tithes. How they want to have exotic vehicles. And of course, aircrafts. Very many pastors don't talk about Good Friday. They talk about sowing seeds. They don't tell, when we talk to real preaching of peace, there are pastors who don't believe in dialogue. They believe we just fight them. That is why you see that the Catholic Church, from the pontifical level, they have a council, Pontifical Council for Interreligious Dialogue. At the national level, we have a whole department. We are a director, mission and dialogue. We believe that we can learn. And it's not just learning, there's what I would call intra-religious dialogue and inter-religious dialogue. Intra-religious dialogue is Muslims go to your church, a mosque, teach yourself, dialogue among yourself. There are factions in Islam too. Even this Boko Haram we are talking about, we have so many versions of them. Now there are sects of Boko Haram. There are sects of Islams. And of course in the church, we have differences. So that is why we have ecumenism. The Christian Association of Nigeria together, coming together, let us talk. How do we move this nation forward?
But how much has that talk really moved the nation forward? Because we're looking at issues of, corruption. We're looking at issues of increasing poverty. We saw billionaire tech giant owner and founder Bill Gates, talk about the fact that there is so much focus on infrastructure than on human capacity. And yet we have churches, just as Adora said earlier, we have churches all over the place. So how much of this talk has translated to progress?
I want to start by saying that if there was no talk or dialogue, it would have been worse. Just this last week here, we had a NIREC meeting, NIREC, Nigeria Interreligious Council in Sheraton. The Sultan of Sokoto was there, Cardinal Nayeko was there. In fact, 25 Muslims, 25 Christians. A lot of people are talking. But you see that the problem we have in this country is a problem of insincerity.
On whose part?
All of us. Many of us are not sincere. And a lot of people have allowed themselves to be carried away by the pecuniary money, what you can get. Recently, I was very sad. I heard of a friend could not take himself to the hospital. Someone else did that for him. He died. Only to discover that he had 150 million in one account. And cumulatively, he had close to 400 million. You know, this greed we talk about, that's why I'm still bringing in Judas. So many of us, we are so greedy that we don't know that anything can happen, you can drop dead. And of course, Jesus Christ said, this all of yours, who will it be? So there are a lot. So what is happening today is that people are ready to sell their souls. Just look at the temptation of Jesus, for example.
I'm actually curious, and I'll ask for that. You said if there was no dialogue, it would have been worse.
It would have
But
been
we still
worse.
hear people, I mean, I've heard stories of people who used to live amongst, like, different religions living together. Perhaps they are Christians, they used to live in the midst of Muslims, but they can no longer live in such a community. Or Muslims live in the communities where they are dominantly Christians in that community. So how much progress? I mean, if you say that if it would have been worse if there was no dialogue,
Yes.
how come we're seeing deepening division amongst religious adherents day in, day out? And religion seems to have become a tool for political campaigns in the country.
Good. You're very right. I want to use the North as an example. As I'm talking to you now, do you know that a lot of Muslims too have died in the hand of the terrorists? Many of them. And that shows you that this thing we call religion is really may not be religion. You heard of what happened in Maiduguri some years ago. A young man just disappeared from the house. And he came back home and told the father, I've brought so much money. I'm going to better your life now. And he know that he was going to join the terrorist group. You know what the father did? A Muslim. He took the boy, handed him over to the soldiers. And of course the boy was killed. So the point I'm trying to make actually is that it's just that even bad news spread faster. Of course, good news is no news in the media very often. And I'm sure that story was not publicized. There is a lot that is going on. The original intention, I want to go back to 2002 when Boko Haram really started. The original intention of Boko Haram was to cause religious crisis, religious war. Before they started bombing churches, you know Muhammad Yusuf, I want to be very precise. Muhammad Yusuf never bombed a church. He was not attacking. But they were actually trying to make sure that they were about the government, the politicians, who used them and dumped them. And you know, of course, how the man died extrajudicially. And that gave birth to the radicalism we have today. So, dialogue is still going on. It's working in a way. But just know that, okay, I'm sorry, I have to quote the Sultan here. When he said that, you know, there is this question of Islamizing Nigeria and all that. Well, the truth is that the Muslims have never really sat down to say we want to Islamize. To evangelize is the duty of both Christians and Muslims. It's just that Nigeria, they have come to a point where they have almost seen the president, they personify the president as a religious figure. If a Christian is there as a president, they will say, oh, the Christian president, the Muslim president. Nigerians, we have not grown to a point where we identify one another as Nigerians. We qualify one another in the context of where you come from. And
Is this the reason why the issues between the herders and the farmers' clashes still hasn't found any, you know, reputable solution? Because again, just some hours ago in Zamfara, you know, some men were killed. and including the headers who lost some of their personnel within that attack. Some military officers were also killed by Boko Haram just a few hours ago. How do we look at a lasting solution if you're saying here that we are yet to identify ourselves as Nigerians rather than people from different ethnic or religious communities?
Well, we have to go back to Jesus in this way. Why did Jesus die? How was he killed? We have two reasons, two major reasons: religion and politics. For the Jews, they felt that he was rocking the boat of the Pharisees, the religious leaders. And the first accusation was he called himself the Son of God. And that could not convince Pilate. Remember that the Jews were under the Romans. I'm bringing this because of this ethnic cleansing. The Jews were under the Romans. They were ready to serve the Romans. But the accusation that eventually convinced, made them to kill Jesus was, he said he's the king of the Jews. Whereas the Jews were not supposed to have kings. So Jesus Christ was convicted because of a political reason. But Pilate did not want to release him. The crowds, the mob. He said, okay, let me release to you, which do I release to you? Jesus or Barabbas? Barabbas was a thief. But the people said, give us Barabbas. Let the sin be upon us and on our children's children. The problem we have today is that Nigerians prefer thieves to honest, patriotic people as leaders. So we're talking about these killings. Now a lot of people are talking. Generals are coming to talk. Everybody is talking. But these were the same people who knew the truth, but they prefer darkness to light.
Why do you say that, Father?
What do I say? We know the truth. Many people, many of us, many Nigerians, they know the truth. But they prefer darkness. Because you can only do evil. For example, those days, armed robbers operate at night. It is not now. So you understand what I'm talking about. But I don't want to start mentioning names now.
But will you say Nigerians are more united now than they were like 20, 30, 40 years ago? Nigeria
is not united. We cannot even talk about one Nigeria now. Remember that during the Civil War, thank God I was born then, to keep Nigeria one is a tax that must be done. Today, when you are talking about leadership in Nigeria, nobody talks about this man is a professional. We are living in a nation where a lawyer can be a minister of works, a lawyer doing the work of engineers. We are in a nation where you put, round pegs in square holes. So let us assume you, my dear sister, if they want to give you an appointment in Nigeria today, everybody knows that you are very good in communication skills. Let us say they want to make you the Minister of Communication. You think they are going to talk about they are not going to talk about your performance in A.I.T. First of all, they want to find out, where are you from? Who do you know? What can you offer? This is the thing.
So religion and ethnicity remains a factor in decision making in this country?
Of course, yes.
Now, does it then mean that clerics like yourself, Father, have probably failed in ensuring that some of these factors are put to check? Adora said earlier that a lot of Nigerians actually learn more from the religious organizations than they learn from schools.
Well, I wouldn't say we have failed, but many of us, we have been very scared to speak truth to power. Look at the 12 apostles. Only one did not die a martyr's death. They were all killed. Only John was not killed. But how many of us today are ready to die for the cause of truth, like Jesus did?
Is that not worrisome?
It's very worrisome.
Can you do an evaluation for us? What's your perspective about the Nigerian economy?
The perspective of Nigerian economy. What do I say here? I'm not an economist. I'm not a financial analyst. I'm a theologian. But from what we can see, we are talking about looting, that people, they are recovering loot, they are recovering money. The big question is, who is zooming? Where is the money? People are still suffering. They say we are out of recession, but people are still suffering. They say that Boko Haram has come to an end. The Dapchi girls are still being kidnapped. What does that have to tell you? So the point I'm trying to say today is that, you see, we have, Nigeria has been so mismanaged to a point that even the voices of the preachers, true preachers, are not known. If I say anything negative here now about government and let's say I mention him, you know the consequences.
Will you tell us about the consequences after the news break? It's top of the hour, Father. So we'll come back to you to complete your thoughts. It's top of the hour, and it's time for us to bring you Pan-African World.
All right, thank you. Welcome back. Now, Father, back to you on the question on churches preaching the messages of prosperity rather than, oneness.
Good. Now, when we talk about churches, remember that we have so many denominations.
Absolutely.
And to answer this question very frankly, we have people who, for one reason or the other, found churches. And of course, you know that the Catholic Church existed for so many years before we have these many churches. Sometimes the followers of a particular pastor may not even know his intentions. And some go as far as faking miracles and all that. But there are still so many churches that are preaching the message of peace, the message of salvation. There are still churches that are leading people to heaven. So it's not every church that is preaching prosperity. But even then, you discover that when we go to CAN meeting, for example, there are a lot of issues that border on how can we live together. Remember that the unity, the motto of CAN is that we may be one. And Jesus Christ prayed about this. John chapter 17, that they may be one. So I think what we should do today is that a lot of pastors are aware that people are criticizing them for this prosperity gospel. So I think they should really go back to the drawing board to ask themselves, why am I a pastor? A pastor the meaning of pastor is shepherd. To take care of your flock. To pray for your flock, not to pray on your flock. The first one, P-R-A-Y, pray for them. Not pray on them, P-R-E-Y, to eat them up. So, but I think there are a lot of people, pastors and priests are still doing this work that Jesus Christ has said. But remember, even of course, Christ said we should not carry haversack and all that. So we have to use Jesus Christ as a model in our evangelization.